Hello everyone, today I'll be narrating 3 new creepyposts that I found off of the Let's Not Meet subreddit. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel helps me a lot. After you've heard these stories, let me know what you think of them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
I was always the weird kid growing up, so making friends was never easy for me. I was a bit of a punk in high school, so living in a preppy, religious town was not my ideal place. Eventually, I met this boy, Sean. I was so happy to finally have someone I connected with. We quickly became best friends and hung out almost every day. He was odd, but so was I, so I just looked past it. Most of the time we were hanging out, we were also on drugs, so I figured some of the stuff he said was just the drugs talking. But one day he said, "I'm gonna stab someone this week." 4 days later, he threatened to shoot up a place on Instagram. He played it off as a joke when I confronted him about it. His parents took away his phone and forced him to move away for a few weeks to let the air clear, but we kept in contact. At this point, my dumb self realized I was in love with him. I did everything I could to clear his name. I even got into arguments with parents on Facebook. My parents begged me to stop talking to him, but for some reason, I truly believed he was good. I didn't want to believe he was capable of hurting anyone. The whole shooting thing never really blew over. When he came back to school, students would run from him in the hallways, people were sending him threats, his reputation was ruined. After all of this, something in him changed. He was angrier. We would be talking and joking around about something, and he would start attacking me with words. If I made a new friend, he'd go out of his way to ruin my new friendship. And for some reason, I saw this as him being protective. About a year went by after this. The verbal abuse continued, and I continued to do nothing about it. I was still in love with him, but I didn't act on it since he was my closest friend. To keep my mind off of Sean, I started dating a boy named Alex. Sean hated Alex, not for any particular reason, he just didn't like that I spent time with someone that wasn't him. Alex was also a weed dealer, and Sean knew this. Sean asked if Alex would front him some weed since he knew we were best friends, and Alex did. I don't remember the exact amount of weed, but it was a decent amount, enough to be mad about if you don't get paid for it. Sean never paid Alex. Alex tried to talk to him about it, but Sean always put him off and avoided him. After about a month of this, Alex saw Sean's car in a Taco Bell parking lot and pulled up. He saw Sean in his car and began to get out. Since Alex had anger issues, he also pulled out his baseball bat. Sean saw him and freaked out. He pulled out of his parking spot quickly, drove off, and called 911, calling it a drug deal gone wrong. Alex was then arrested for assault with a deadly weapon. 3 days later, when Alex got out of jail, he was driving to his friend's house, who lives in Sean's neighborhood, when he saw Sean standing in his front yard. Alex rolled out his window and called him a coward, then drove away. Sean called the police again, and Alex was arrested for stalking. Around this time, my parents caught me smoking. I didn't want to lie anymore, so I was honest and told my parents everything. Obviously, they were very mad at me for getting myself into that situation, and I had just told them I was smoking weed and dating a drug dealer, so I was in a decent amount of trouble. My parents took my phone as soon as I got home from school, and I wasn't allowed to see Alex when he got out of jail. They took my paycheck so I didn't have money to buy weed, and they made me download a tracker on my phone so they could make sure that I was home when they weren't. They contemplated calling Sean's parents and telling them we had been smoking together. I knew that if Sean got caught smoking again, he would get kicked out of his house, so I snuck on my phone and texted him that my parents might call his parents, and he was pissed. He called me horrible names and said he wished he had never met me. I finally had enough and told him not to talk to me anymore. My parents never called his parents. We didn't talk at all. I asked not to be scheduled with him at work and avoided him at school. We didn't have any classes together, so it wasn't too hard, but hearing the stuff he'd say about me made it a little difficult. He had started rumors that I was addicted to coke and I was selling my nudes. This is when the text started. He began texting me constantly, so I blocked his number. Then he'd use someone else's phone to text me, so I'd block that person's number. Then he'd use WhatsApp or GroupMe to text me since we use those for work, so I just block him on there. He eventually got fired from our job because he had been writing tips on receipts if people didn't ask for a copy of their receipt and left the tip line empty. The continuous messages went on for a few weeks, and I just continued to block anyone he was associated with. I didn't want to be in contact with him whatsoever. He kept making new Instagram accounts to message me on, and all of his attempts to contact me failed. One day, I had a late lesson at School of Rock, where I took guitar lessons. My teacher had stayed late for me, so I was expecting his car to be the only car in the parking lot, but it wasn't. There were 2 cars in the parking lot, my teacher's and Sean's. To this day, I don't know how he knew knew I was going to be there. I quickly parked, locked my doors, and thought about what to do. I then realized he wasn't in his car, so I calmed down a bit and called inside to ask if he was there, but he wasn't. I cautiously got out of my car and got my guitar, then walked inside with no problems. After my lesson, I came out to see that he was now parked right next to me, waiting for me to get into my car. When he saw me, he began screaming profanities at me. I was paralyzed. He just sat there screaming at me. I quickly climbed into my car from the passenger door so I didn't have to walk next to him, and then drove home as fast as I could. He began asking people to ask me to talk to him at school. Of course, I didn't. Each time someone mentioned his name to me, it caused me to have a panic attack so bad I'd have to leave school. I ended up missing the entire month of November and then switching to online school. A month after I switched to online school, I was driving with a friend to pick up food for my mom. As soon as we pulled into the drive-thru, the car behind me begins to flash their brights at me. I look at my rearview mirror and see Sean's car. He has a sticker across the top of his windshield, so I knew it was him right away. I look over at my friend in fear and she said, "I didn't want to scare you, so I didn't say anything, but he's been following us since we left Target." I panic and just pretend to not notice him. He then pulled out of the drive-thru and parked right next to it by the exit. As soon as he pulled out, so did I. I sped to my friend's house, dropped her off, and went straight home. At this point, my parents thought going to the police would be the smartest thing to do. An officer came to my house and took a statement. I showed him screenshots of every message he had sent me over the months, and my friend that was in the car with me in the drive-thru talked to him as well. We decided not to press charges, but to just file an incident report. Days go by and I don't hear anything from him. I thought that maybe it was over and I could move on with my life, but my dad told me Sean had messaged him on Facebook. He had said I was addicted to pills and that I stole money from him to buy more. I've never done pills in my life. I stick to natural drugs. My parents know this, so they screenshot the messages and send them to the police. The police go by his house and tell him to stop contacting me. I continue to get messages from random Instagram accounts, and I sometimes saw his car behind me, but each time I just wrote down the location, date, and time I saw him. At this point, I started to work with Alex's lawyers to prove that Sean was not an innocent victim. Eventually, Alex's charges were dropped. Sean was proven to be unreliable since I came forward with my story. I wish I could say I had an ending to this story, but I don't. I still get random messages, but I don't bother to screenshot them anymore. Since I switched to online school, I was able to graduate a year early, and because of that, I moved away for college so I don't have to worry about him following me anymore. The last I heard about him was that he got arrested a few months ago. I went on a Tinder date some time ago while I was adjusting to a new city I had moved to. I didn't really know anybody there, so I used some online dating apps to see the dating scene around town. I landed one from a girl that seemed just like a chill person. We had a few exchanges through the Tinder app and then decided to meet up for a drink. I picked her up at her house and she greeted me at the door and gave me a hug. She said the name of a local bar she wanted to go to for us to chat and get to know each other. I told her I would drive and proceeded to my car. The first red flag I noticed was when I walked to my car and opened the door, she had just followed me to the driver's side and was standing behind me staring. I looked at her blankly for 15 seconds and asked her if she was going to get in. She said, "Sure, I would love to," and went the long way to the passenger's side around the back of the car. Since I had just met the girl, I figured she had just maybe smoked some weed or something, as I had kind of got the vibe she was a bit of a stoner. As I was driving to the bar, she talked in a very low voice, almost as if she was trying to whisper. I am not hard of hearing or anything, but I had to ask her to repeat herself several times just so I could make out the full sentences she was saying. When we got to the bar, I made sure we got a seat closer to the back away from most people, just so I could have a little quiet in order to hear her. The conversations honestly carried on as normal from this point, and it was actually a fun time for the time being. We talked about different things we were interested in, and she did bring up she did recreationally use weed and a few other tripping substances like shrooms and such. I am not much of a fan of these, but it at least made me relax in the back of my mind to think maybe she was just high off marijuana, and that rationally explains some of the out of their behavior. Granted, I had a few drinks at this point, so I was honestly not thinking straight. I asked her if she wanted to go to my place after drinks and she agreed. When we got to my place, we had a few more drinks, then she started talking about her jewelry. This is where it gets weird. She told me her jewelry was her big secret and it defined her. When I asked her why it was so important, she said, "I'm actually Anatasia, and I was never killed in Russia. My jewelry is my link to my past." It was hard for me to take that serious at this point with how much I drank, so I kind of challenged that statement using the little bit I knew about history. At this point, she freaked out and started yelling at the top of her lungs about how I don't respect ancestors in history. And then she got quiet and tiptoed right up to me and grabbed me by my neck. She then brought my face eye to eye with hers while still holding my neck. She says at this point, I am a shaman and I will curse you. My ancestors have destroyed many people and you do not respect that. You are from oppressive ancestors and they will be punished. Then she put her hand in a whiskey glass and made a cross on my face and kissed my forehead. At this point, I started to sober up a little. I talked her into calming down, telling her I was only joking. Then she slowly started getting back to normal. Then she started talking about her cats. She tells me she has a list of people who she tames to act as cats. I am not about judging people on their interests, so I listen in. She then tells me all the things she does to them and starts acting like a cat in my living room. My red flags in my head were tingling like crazy at this point, so I just listened to try not to set her off. She noticed sage on my kitchen counter and asked me to let her light it and bless the house. Side note, I use sage to make my house smell better occasionally. It's kind of a ritual I like to do, but it's mine and mine alone. Something I take very personally and I like to do myself. I tell her no, she can't light it and that it's my thing to do on my own. Then she freaks out telling me I am a horrible human being and screaming all over the place. I tell her I can take her home now and she runs to the door and goes outside. As I get outside, she is screaming at the top of her lungs that I am a horrible person and I should go die. I tell her she can walk herself home then, and I go back to my place and lock the door. She then starts banging on the door hard and about 10 minutes saying she left her phone in there. I grab her phone off the kitchen counter and open the door to hand it to her. She tries to barge inside and I block her with my forearm. She then acts like she's about to punch me. I just hold my ground and tell her she is not coming in. She screams she wanted the whiskey bottle we were drinking from. I told her no, because I paid for the thing. I slam the door at that point and lock it. I hear her bang on the door for a minute. I then hear her footsteps going down the stairs. I waited about an hour and then went walking outside to see if she was still hanging around. I didn't see her, nor did I ever see her again after that. So a few months ago, I was out hiking with my friend. We live in the mountains of western Maryland and we were about 6 miles into an 8-mile loop we have done frequently when we decided to take some pictures and eat a snack at a summit. This area of the trail had a park, benches and tables, and a parking lot. We were sitting and talking and I noticed a man just walking around the parking lot alone. He was walking aimlessly and staring at his feet. What confused me was that he was in jeans and a button-down shirt, not exactly hiking attire. We decided to set off on the last 2-mile leg of the loop. This park goes downhill to the headquarters of the park and is cut out of the mountain/bank. The end of that leg is the parking lot where our car is. You don't have a lot of visibility from the trail and you have to walk single file. I was walking in front and talking to my friend. I turned to look at her and I see the same man right behind her, following at a rudely close distance. I immediately got a gut-wrenching feeling. I noticed that he didn't have any pack or hiking gear and was not even wearing boots. Something about his eyes really spooked me. So a bit more walking and he continues to fall very close. I say to my friend that I have to tie my shoe as a reason to step off the trail and let him pass us, in case he is only following closely because he wants to go faster than we are. She immediately catches on to what I'm doing and we pull over. He looks startled and she says hello politely. He just stares. This is when I notice that he is carrying a stick. As I'm fiddling with my shoe, she stands between us and he passes us. We wait to give him some distance ahead of us, but he immediately slows down. We wait for a bit longer and he gets to the furthest part of the trail that has sight lines to us, and he turns around looking up at us. We decided that something feels too wrong about this guy and we don't want to have to pass him again. So we turn around and walk back up the trail towards the park with the tables and parking. A few minutes of walking up the trail, I look back and see him walking up the trail too. He's following us. I tell my friend to walk faster. We book it up the trail and get to the parking lot area we were at before. We start to strategize and wait, deciding that we will wait to see if he comes back up the trail to the lot. There are more people around, so we felt safer waiting and out. About 20 minutes go by and nothing. We are talking about how that could mean that he kept going on the trail and is long gone, or is waiting on the trail where it is more deserted. We see a couple come up from the trail where we were, presumably taking the loop in the opposite direction that we are. We approach them and ask if they saw anyone on the trail between the slot and the next. They tell us they saw a young man sitting on a rock about halfway down. They describe the man who was following us. We explain our interaction with him to the wife and get into a conversation back and forth about whether or not he was a threat. The husband finally interjects and says we need to call a ranger. He wasn't just sitting there, he had a knife and was carving that stick. Needless to say, we called a ranger. The nice couple walked that last leg with us to make sure we got to our car safely and then even gave us their numbers in case we needed anything. The rangers then walked the trail, but there was no sight of him. I wish I knew where he went and what happened to him, but I'm glad to know that my instincts are legitimate. Alright, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments below. But as always,
Have a nice day.